Thank you once again. I know you've heard several times today, but I want to add to the chorus of individuals who are so pleased to see such a great turnout for what we believe to be a critical discussion around generating healthy communities and bringing about increased quality of life and prosperity in the South Florida area. To this panel today, we'll be talking about the role that education and educational attainment and educational achievement can play or can contribute to prosperity in the communities that we all live in. And so with that said, I'm going to quickly introduce our panel, and then we're going to leverage their expertise across a number of topics related to educational attainment and healthy communities. So first we have from the Early Learning Coalition, Ms. Pam Hollingsworth. To her left, oh, I lost that on my, I'm sorry. Lisa Martinez, I'm sorry. I'm looking up affiliations for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. To her left, now this is the challenge. I want to make sure I say it correctly. Ms. Radicio? Okay, from Miami-Dade College. And to her left, Mr. Michael Finney from the Beacon Council. Just thank you. So today, I think what we'll get started, maybe we'll start maybe more globally with our questions, and then we'll kind of pare down as we go from there. Why don't we get started by talking about what is the expectation that we should have of our education system and our training system in expanding the talent pool here in South Florida?
Well, certainly from the early learning perspective, a reasonable and appropriate expectation is that children will be born into happy and healthy homes, that they will enter a high quality early learning environment. We all know how important that is to optimum development, that they will be school ready when they enter kindergarten and prepared to read at or above grade level by grade 3, quite simply.
And that's as simple as that can get, right? So when we're really contemplating about how do you establish a talent pool, I think it's really important to be able to note that it isn't something that just naturally emerges, that you have to be deliberate in your approach. And I work for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and we have over 350,000 students within our school district, and we need to be able to make sure that there is a strong fighting chance that they stay in Miami-Dade, because we want them to stay in Miami-Dade, don't we, Michael? And so the way in which we are trying to be able to make sure that we do that is to provide a great deal of choice programs, over 900 program choice options within our school district, also providing career and technical programs within our school district. When you contemplate the need and interest in being able to make sure that our talent pool is strong, we also have to make sure that they are academically prepared. And we are in a position where we have reached record high graduation rates with 84% of our students graduating. When we reflect upon the idea of the actual schools and the progress of the schools that we have within our community as well, because if we want to be able to have a strong talent pool, we also need to be able to have businesses that want to be able to make Miami-Dade home. And so making sure that our schools are high achieving. And this year I am really excited to be able to announce, I'm sure some of you already know this, but there are on the state grading system, there are no F schools at all, and 66% of our schools are either A or B. So when we're contemplating, I'll stop for that. And so when we're contemplating the idea of a talent pool, we need to be able to look at it from a two-pronged approach. One, preparing our students in a manner that they can be able to be productive citizens and individuals that can be able to contribute to that workforce, but also two, being able to be an asset for our workforce that's currently choosing Miami-Dade as a place to be able to call home.
Excellent. Lenore?
So at Miami-Dade College, we work off of the premise that education is the great equalizer. We're the largest institution of higher education in the United States. We enroll 165,000 students annually. Over 60% of those students are low-income students who are on some form of federal financial aid. And another 20% of our students actually live below the poverty line. So we are the proof that anyone who wants to have a post-secondary education has the ability to do that, and has the ability to do that at virtually no cost. In fact, when you look at the average amount of combined federal as well as scholarship, institutional scholarships that we provide to our students, the average cost of education to our students is actually a negative. In most cases, our students actually get money back for coming to the college. That creates the ability for us to train a large number of individuals to enter into high-wage jobs, and that really has been our focus. We've been working very closely with our business and industry partners in close collaboration with the Beacon Council and the One Community, One Goal work to ensure that the programs that we're putting in place not only help students meet their own career goals, but are closely tied to the type of training that the community needs in order to advance the economic development of Miami itself. And that's critical because that ensures that our students, when they graduate, not only have a diploma in hand, but they also have the opportunity of a job in hand as well. And in fact, when you look at our graduates 1 year after graduation, the bulk of them, over 90% of them, are actually found employed. And those are some great outcomes that we can really be proud of. But it's a huge collaboration, and it starts with the collaboration with the K-12 system as the intake for our pipeline, and the collaboration with the industry sector to ensure that they're picked up and that we've plugged those holes, those leaks that occur at either end of that pipeline to ensure that we translate an incoming student into a successful graduate and eventually a contributing employee in our community.
Yeah, just to add a couple thoughts. So the work that we do at the Beacon Council really is focused on the result of the good work that happens by all of our educational partners. We actually have, as a part of our One Community, One Goal initiative, an Academic Leaders Council, which all the colleges and universities, as well as the K-12 system in this community, are all active members of that council. And they really serve as a vehicle for us to share what's happening from an employer's perspective, from a technology perspective, and an industry perspective, so that our colleges, universities, and the K-12 system are actually developing students that are educated and employment ready to support the needs of employers. You know, I often tell people when I sit and just talk about economic development at its core, the first and most important factor that we like to communicate to employers, and that frankly employers want to understand, is can I find the workforce that's needed to support my business? And so often we think about other factors. Are there tax incentives? Are there sites? And all these other factors that are important. But first and foremost, if you can't make a case that a business can find the key talent they need, it is highly unlikely that they would ever locate here. We had a good experience just recently with all of our academic partners, and Lisa pointed out something that to me it was really pivotal in terms of our ability to tell a story about what's happening here in Miami-Dade. And that's the fact that our K-12 public system literally did not have a single failing school. And that's kind of a negative way of looking at things. But the problem is when you look at our urban school district, especially in some of our world-class communities that we have around the country, it is hard to find a district that does not have failing schools. So it's an ongoing challenge for us, and it's one that we were able to articulate in a very favorable way in one of our most recent proposals that we submitted for. But even more importantly, we were able to include a single letter of support where all 16 of our colleges, universities, and the K-12 systems, not just in Miami-Dade, but also Broward and Palm Beach, came together to really state their incredible support for providing the kind of workforce for today and for the future that key technology-based companies are looking for. And as we continue to transform as a community, we're going to become more tech. This country is becoming more tech. The world is becoming more tech. And the ability of our academic institutions to support the development of that kind of a workforce is critically important. And so I was really excited that it didn't take any arm twisting at all, but rather a very simple ask: what's your capacity to help us deliver the kind of workforce that's needed? And all of these institutions came together and said, we can do this and we can do it together, so that we become a desirable location for tech-based employment going forward.
So it sounds like we have a pretty tremendous capacity in the region to do this, to drive education as a tool for prosperity. Do we have examples of actual linkages from early learning to grade school to the college levels? What beyond the communication, what tangible things are we doing to make sure that those things translate to the benefits that Michael just mentioned?
I think there certainly is a continuum of learning. You often hear the term cradle to career, which very clearly embraces the birth to 5, the early learning space. At the Early Learning Coalition, we focus very closely on birth to 3. We know that that's where 85% of brain development occurs. That lays a foundation. The reality is that if early learning is not doing its job correctly, then the K-12 system is going to have a far more difficult job. There's a 13% return on investment for cities and counties that invest smartly in early learning. So I think that that is a linkage, the birth to K linkage and the birth to beyond linkage. I think that there's room for growth. I think we've made great progress over the last several years. What's a little bit different about the early learning arena, in Miami-Dade County alone, there are more than 1,500 diverse early learning programs. Many of them lay inside Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Many of them are faith-based private providers, early Head Start. So there are a wealth of ways in which a young child can be educated. And we have a very strong transition program with Miami-Dade County Public Schools. We know that children's early learning experiences are nested in the community, but we do need, I would say, a tighter link and ongoing and stronger recognition to the importance of early learning experiences and the lifelong effect and impact that this will have on a child's success, and certainly directly relates to the talent pool here in Miami-Dade.
Lisa, how could we create that stronger link?
Well, I'll tell you that we have come a long way over the last, I'd say, 10 years or so, in reflecting upon the notion of quality counts and the importance of being able to say that Miami-Dade County Public Schools VPK programs and the consistency of the same type of programming that happens at a private early learning site. How do we make sure that that happens? And the Early Learning Coalition leads that. In a way in which there's a strong level of cohesiveness across the entire community, so that when a child enters into kindergarten, there is a greater readiness to being able to look to the pipeline that comes down from K down to the higher education institutions, up to the higher education institutions. And when we're talking about, then the K-12 institution has a unique position, because we have to think about, as our students are entering into our system, making sure that those opportunities are there, because if they can't read, if they don't have the proficiency levels, then it becomes harder no matter what. But then in trying to be able to reflect upon that pipeline, that consistency, and that connection to industries that want to or will be wanting to invest in Miami-Dade. And in doing so, the Academic Leaders Council that Michael had mentioned earlier has been a critical convening of the leaders of the different organizations, so as to be able to connect the catalog of courses that are taking place, that are provided within K-12 programs and our high school programs and on our colleges and our universities, and the collaboration that has been essential in being able to make sure that those dots in fact connect. The work that started 5-6 years ago, and being able to say, what is it that we want to be able to accomplish, and where do those gaps lie? And we currently have a comprehensive understanding of where those pipelines rest and how we've been able to bolster them. But that's not only where it needs to stop, because now, in being able to make sure that we've made that progress and know where there's places to be able to grow and reflect upon the feedback that the Beacon Council can provide us in regards to industry interests, then we can be able to work even stronger in reflecting upon what we can be able to do to prepare. So it's an important straddling of the fence for the K-12 organization.
Now, Lenore, Miami-Dade College has been phenomenal at creating linkages, not only here in South Florida, but with national, big name universities, and as well as creating entrepreneurs. Can you speak to some of the successes around that?
Sure,
and where that came from? Where did that mindset come from?
So we have a number of articulation agreements, not just within Florida, but across the nation with a number of different universities. And we have different ways of helping to direct the pipeline of students there. One of them is through our Honors College, which is a very specific set of interventions for Miami's best and brightest. And we've had graduates from the Honors College who've been accepted at Yale and Cornell and have gone on to do just amazing things at other institutions outside the state. But I think at the core of it, even when you look at the non-honors college students, the key here is really the development of the students at whatever level they are at when they first come in. For any of you who have been following any dialogue at all around national higher education, there's a lot of talk around equity. So before, the talk was on diversity and diversifying the student body. And we've done a rather good job of that, and access, I think, is at an all-time high for underserved populations. But where we haven't done as great a job is on equity. And I think that's one of the things that we do extremely well at Miami-Dade College, that we do extremely well at Miami-Dade County Public Schools and across the higher education landscape here in Miami-Dade County. And that's being able to match the resources that students need, whether they need support economically or financially, whether they need academic support because they're coming to us with some needs and just basic skills. It's being able to find what are those resources that this particular student needs at this moment in time in order to help him or her be successful and to get across the stage on graduation day and then move on and help to break that cycle of poverty that their families have been found in. And that's really where I think all of us excel and have done an extremely good job in this community. We've also been working on looking at more non-traditional forms of education. So one of the programs that we have right now at the college is the Idea Center, which is the entrepreneurial hub, not just for the college, but for the Miami-Dade County community just in general, of being able to provide both short-term and long-term training that is needed in order to support the entrepreneurial infrastructure here in the county. That has helped us not only to provide the traditional credit-based type of education that you normally think of when you think of it as a college, but also short-term training in terms of boot camps, workshops, non-credit training that individuals can come and acquire there. It's important because as we start to look at the evolution of education, more and more we're seeing that employers, particularly in the tech world, aren't really looking so much for the credential, but for the skills. And so what we're trying to do is to help provide students with both. Here's a short-term way of getting the skill, but longer term, here's the way that that workshop, that non-credit opportunity can help stack into a college credit credential that will help you to build your career as you move forward.
Michael, you mentioned earlier that having a school district that has no failing schools is a great way to to get new businesses to come here. How can we get a return on investment with our success where we promote people here creating businesses and developing businesses?
That's a great question. So, interestingly enough, Miami-Dade was actually rated as the #1 location in the United States for business startups. #1 in the United States, and that is a reference that comes from the Kaufman Foundation. They do an index on a national basis annually, and as it turns out, Miami-Dade is #1. So there is an incredible entrepreneurial spirit here, lots of entrepreneurial activity. Our challenge, of course, is being able to scale those businesses beyond just a small startup to being something that represents the next big thing, whatever that might be. And so some of the work that we're doing is focused on that, and there is an ecosystem that is growing and developing to help make that happen that we're directly involved with. So the talent pool is rich when it comes to the entrepreneurial spirit. Finding ways to help those individuals grow is one of the challenges that we're struggling with right now. And it's a combination of people, financial resources, other infrastructure that it takes in order for an entrepreneur to be successful. I did want to put out there one other, I think, wonderful outcome from some of the work that our K through 12 system and our universities and colleges are doing that we are directly involved with. Again, through our Academic Leaders Council, Dr. Rosenberg from FIU served as the chair for last year. This year, it's being chaired by Superintendent Carvalho from the Miami-Dade Public School System. And interestingly enough, our most successful initiative last year was a talent development network that we worked with FIU and the academic leaders to create. That essentially has an exchange where employers are able to post jobs and students are able to post resumes for internships. This year, we're going to be adding the K through 12 system to that. So the success we had with our college students, we're now going to be extending into the K through 12 system, because there are a lot of opportunities that are not, in fact, even doesn't require a college degree, but they require students who are interested in some of the semi-skilled or middle-skilled occupations. I was talking with a representative from Boeing a couple months ago about the need for mechanics for the aerospace industry, which is one of our really important industries. It doesn't require a college degree, but it does require a level of skill that goes beyond what is a basic education. And the training for that is pretty extensive. But the outcome of it are some incredibly high-paying jobs that many students would love to have, especially if they're not right now focused on pursuing a two-year degree or a four-year college degree. So we're going to have a chance to introduce students who have an interest in working with their hands, but still making a living that is a living wage, making better than a living wage. We'll have opportunities to demonstrate that through internships that will be extended into the K through 12 system. And we think that's a great outcome where our universities and our K through 12 system working together with us can demonstrate that we can support employers in ways that historically we haven't been able to.
And if I may, just to be able
Sure.
to jump in there for a second, because we have, as a K-12 system, been working through internships the past few years with strong partners like the Children's Trust, like Miami-Dade County, in investing in paid summer internship programs, drawing that linkage that Michael references to the broader picture of the higher education institutions is essential for us to be able to take this to the next level. But the superintendent has also conveyed the importance of being able to contemplate if somebody's not ready or does not want to go the route of a college or university track, but wants to be able to figure out what sort of technical skills they could be able to receive certifications in. We have a robust set of pathways with the school district itself for adult career and technical programs. And so in being able to make sure that that pathway, in collaboration with Miami-Dade College, and being able to determine how we could be able to bolster those opportunities and people can be able to embrace them as opportunities for not only living wage, but high-paying jobs, and being able to consider as opportunities for their careers.
Okay, so I guess a rapid fire round. What's left to be done? What's left to be done? What is, if there's one thing that you really wish we could move forward to really leverage and really activate using education as a tool for improving the health and well-being of communities, what would it be?
Much of what we've been talking about here today is, all of the various factors that affect young children and how that has a very far-reaching effect on a child and on a family's life, and in fact on a community. I think continuing these conversations, I feel incredibly fortunate as an early education person to be included in this conversation today. The Early Learning Coalition should be part of this conversation. I think continued vertical integration and understanding that education is not an island, that it is about housing, it is about health, and more than anything, I think the Early Learning Coalition every day serves 22,000 families that are living at or below 150% of the poverty level. And that's just a fraction of families in this county who are eligible for these services. We cannot serve all families. I think keeping in mind the impact that poverty has on diminished outcomes for children and families, especially very young children. I'll close by saying, if we're doing our job correctly, Lisa has an easier job, Lenore has an easier job. This is part of the cradle to career continuum.
I'm just piggybacking on your prioritizations. Opportunity gaps. When we reflect upon the strong successes that the school district and the colleges, the Early Learning Coalition, universities have accomplished, we've done that, but that doesn't mean that we have reached all kids, all families. And so in being able to contemplate what's at the heart of an opportunity gap, our true understanding of what it takes to be able to reach a child that it does not have an even playing field, and how can we be able to address true equity. And in being able to determine how we do that, we need to understand the family and being able to invest in those youth that need to have our arms wrapped around them with, if it needs to be, social workers early on. Why aren't they going to school? Why are they troubled with behavior? And being able to understand the root causes of that, and then be able to make sure that they are ready and prepared to enter into the pipelines of these opportunities. But unless we address those root causes, then we won't be able to even have them engaged within the pathway because they won't know why to.
So I would say that I think the work that's really left to be done is really a strong commitment and the accompanying investment in public education, particularly public higher education. We've begun a rhetoric that is starting to disinvest, particularly in the community colleges. The public school system last year as well was in danger of losing some significant funding. The community colleges lost a significant amount of funding last year, but we are the ones that work with the students that live in our communities. And if we're looking at changing the face of the community and really creating healthy and thriving communities, you have to start with education. That needs to be recognized and that needs to be invested in. Because if you invest in education, at the long run, you'll need to invest less in the prison systems, less in law enforcement, less in healthcare, because you've done the work at the front end. And so that needs to be recognized and called out.
Yes, I have a couple thoughts. The first is that there's a common thread that connects all the panels that have presented today. And that common thread is the people that we're trying to serve. We're all trying to serve a common audience, and they have needs that really go across a continuum of support that's needed. And until we start to provide that support across that entire continuum, we will only have spotty success. In other words, someone who needs housing support likely needs support with jobs, likely needs support with education, and so on and so forth. And until we begin to make those connections and start working in a synchronized way, like one of the charts I saw earlier, I think we will only have limited success in making the kind of difference that we're talking about. The second thing that I think is critically important is that we move from being in a pilot mode, or in terms of developing models of best practices from community to community, we need to develop scalable models that really have the potential to have an impact just as the next Facebook might. Right? And why are we not thinking about impacting having social impact at the same level that we think about having impact when it comes to the next tech company or the next manufacturing company or whatever it is? The opportunities are there, but we have to start thinking about how to scale these wonderful ideas that we're talking about and doing it in a way that truly involves things like pay for performance and other tools that are out there to really fund the activities that we're working on.
Excellent. So now we'll take an opportunity to do to entertain some questions. One small item of housekeeping. I introduced everyone except myself. And I guess this is a carryover from being an academic where you don't usually have to come in the classroom and say who you are. My name is Lou Brewster. I work for FIU's Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine, where I serve as the Chief of Policy Research and Community Development. I'm imagining that we can have, do we have a microphone circulating, or how are we entertaining the questions?
I see one over there.
I see one as well. Yeah, we're gonna test his handwriting. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh, this is actually Incredible. It's a Catholic school handwriting here. Okay. How can we involve the education system to help increase wages, provide better transportation, and affordable housing? Do you need me to repeat it? Who would like to take that one?
So that, so that one is one of the biggest challenges that we have. And as I said before, looking at the population of students that we serve, we have a large population of students that are actually homeless. And we have other students that struggle in maintaining a permanent residence from semester to semester. We have partnered with an organization called Single Stop that helps to connect students with resources in the community to help them with transportation needs, with housing needs, with food needs as well. On top of that, we started at our North Campus with a food pantry for our students, and that program has now expanded to the majority of our campuses. And for students at campuses that don't currently have a food pantry, they're welcome to come to our other campuses that do have one to help them with those issues. But it is a significant problem that we have, because if they can't come to school, if they don't have a place where they could go home to and continue the work that they begin in our classrooms, it just creates this cycle where they have to drop out of school to try and find work, to try and find housing, to have food, and it's just this vicious cycle. So between the work with Single Stop, some of the scholarships and aid programs that we've put into place, it's one way to get at the problem, but it's a larger problem that needs addressing.
Is there anything in particular that can be done around increasing wages?
I think no.
Especially here in South Florida, where we're always concerned about affordable housing, living wage. Is there something that we can do from this platform to address increasing wages?
I think it's I can give you just as an institution how we address the wage discussion, as well as a way in which we're seeking out to be able to be a partner in the affordable housing solution for the community as a whole. And so I think that we lead by example when we speak to the way in which we address the living wage and how we could be able to make sure that when we're negotiating for our employees, that we push as far as we can go with the funding that we have available. We have 40,000 employees, and within this community, that is clearly a significant amount of individuals that are within our community, and that makes an impact. And that's essential for us as employers within this community. Do we prioritize that as best as we possibly can? That's on one front. On the affordable housing piece, we own a great deal of land as a school district, and we are exploring ways in which we could work with, in partnership with not only the Public Housing and Community Development Department within Miami-Dade County. There's a project that kind of scales south of the river and north of the river solutions in downtown to be able to address not only workforce housing, but affordable housing opportunities that are benefits to our employees as well, because we want our employees to be able to want to stay. And so they need to be able to afford that solution. And then secondly, if we can be able to kind of work that out, then it's also about exploring collaborations with developers and being able to see how we can do that through the lenses of being able to have a lot of different resources for those that also need to be able to have affordable options.
You know, I wanted to offer a thought on this subject because, prior to coming to Florida, I've been here for about 6 months now. I moved here from Michigan. And some of the work that I was doing in Michigan centered around how to deal with all of these issues. Mm-hmm. And again, I think what that question really gets at is this continuum that I described earlier. Mm-hmm. It really touches a whole lot of things. And at the core of it, it's really trying to solve for poverty, yeah. Right? If we can solve for poverty, a lot of these issues really go away. And we've been fighting this war on poverty ever since I had 0 gray hair. Right? I was a real young guy when that fight started, and I literally remember it. And so figuring out how to solve for poverty, I think, is one of the challenges we're up against. And I met a researcher who worked for an organization called Matrix Human Services. They're a national organization. They do a lot of good work. And they had developed this hypothesis that if you developed standards of care for dealing with poverty the same way you deal with medical maladies, you would have incredible discipline around how to solve some of these major challenges that we have. And if anybody wants to get access to some of their work, I have one of their, at least a pitch deck that was the result of some of the research they did that's centered around developing standards of care. So those of you in the medical profession, you know what I'm talking about. If someone has diabetes, no matter where you go in the United States, you're going to be treated the exact same way in terms of a standard of care. But when it comes to poverty and all the other maladies that contribute to it, go to 3 different organizations in this town, and you're likely to get a different treatment. So you never solve for it because you treat it so many different ways based on the organization that you approach. So imagine if we decided to use our collective resources to begin developing standards that said, here is how you deal with poverty in a systemic way. I think we could solve some of the problems, and it gets at everything that was described on that card.
So,
I'd like to
Yes.
just say very
Yeah,
briefly,
sure.
if I may. So from an early education perspective, children who are experiencing homelessness actually are a priority, and families are able to receive funding for child subsidy services. And I want to very quickly, from a wage perspective, the average preschool teacher nationally earns $8.50 an hour. What that means is that most preschool teachers are eligible for services. This is a field where 98% of the people that are teaching preschool are also women, so there are gender issues relating to this as well. As a point of reference, at the age of 62, 30 years ago, when I was a preschool teacher in Virginia, I was making $6.50 an hour with a college degree. So I can tell you in 30 years, income has changed very, very, very little. So there's much work for us to do in this area. I think, there's lots of good heads here at the table today, so I won't talk about any particular programs, but there is a critical need to take care of the people that are taking care of our youngest citizens.
absolutely. I know we received several questions, but unfortunately our time has run out on us. Thank you to our panelists. I think they did an excellent job of answering a broad array of questions.